myself, I have naturally many of the same problems, the trials and tribulations of any regular minister, of any other church. The only thing that really presents a difference is the fact that I cannot perhaps be sanctimonious about things, but I can do anything that I want to. I can pursue any kind of lustful desires that I might feel. I can engage in any activities that are so-called sinful activities and not really worry about any ecumenical councils making it right for me to do these things. It's like saying that you have to only hate to be a Satanist. You cannot love. It's like saying that people that aren't Satanists only love and can't practice hate. Therefore, Satanists must practice hate. But that's like saying that just because somebody drinks coffee, they can never drink tea. People like to believe that, though, because they always talk very much about a curse that's been conjured successfully. It even makes the newspapers. But any kind of a blessing that will save someone or pull somebody through a financial bind, nobody ever talks about that. And it shows that we are right in our judgment as far as human nature and what it represents. Sexual freedom is something we feel is very important. As a necessary requisite of the Satanic Church. It isn't the most important thing, but certainly it's an elective. We feel a person should be free to indulge in all of the so-called fetishes, all of the so-called aberrations that they would so desire, as long as they don't hurt anyone that doesn't deserve or wish to be hurt. I think it should be brought out that we not only condone but we encourage all types of what would be called sexual perversities and deviations, because we feel that in a few short years it will be established that everyone is a sexual deviant, pervert, fetishist, or something or other, and that the person that isn't is the exception rather than the rule. So
we'll be on the ground floor.
We'll be on the ground floor. We feel that too much emphasis has been placed on so-called sexual freedom in quotes, meaning everybody take their clothes off and
you
be
ring a bell and you say strip, and then
a daisy chain and your anchor man.
And this is really working at sexual freedom, we feel. That to really have sexual freedom, you should take what are already your hang-ups, as they call them, and have fun with them. Homosexuals in the group.
But they're accepted. That's the point. They're accepted, and no one makes any fun of them.
There's no tolerance, in other words, of homosexuals. We don't feel as though we have to tolerate them.
No.
We just simply accept them just as much as we would accept ourselves or the person next to us that would think exactly the way we would. I guess the two most popular reasons that people join the church is because either they're just disgusted, they're just fed up with the sanctimonious pussyfooting around that other religions have given them, and they're just tired of saying one thing and practicing another, and they'd like to at least get together with other people. And after all, man is a social animal, and no different than any other animal, except he's probably the most vicious of all animals. And he wants to get together with other people that feel the same way he does. And why not belong to a religion or to a group of people that at least believe in the same philosophy? These rituals consist of recreations of old ceremonies that have been practiced for centuries. We recreate the ceremonies of the Knights Templars, a noble group of gentlemen who, because of social pressures, made it very obvious that they were the standard bearers of Christianity. We feel that in the light of what society has shown us in the last year or two, we have pretty much exemplified what the Knights Templars were doing, except we, of course, climate-wise, don't have to worry about calling ourselves Christians. We call ourselves Satanists. We recreate many of these ceremonies. We also recreate many of the ceremonies of the West Indian Voodoo religion. And we also utilize Norse ritual, the casting of the runes, calling upon of Wotan and Thor, and Loki, and all of the gods and demigods of the northern regions. We feel that the so-called carnal side of man, or the carnal nature of man, is the most important. We feel the soul is just a pittance. It's something that's sort of wrung out. Like if you squeeze an orange, you get a few drops of juice out of it, and certainly this can be the essence. But this doesn't mean that the orange is any less important simply because the juice comes out of it. We feel that the body of man, the carnal symbolism of man, is by far the most important. We feel true transcendentalism is to rise above the inventions, the puerile inventions of man for his own masochistic needs, perhaps, in the way of spiritual or soul guidance, and recognize his baser instincts, his carnal existence, as the end byproduct and as the epitome, the height of all great creation. In other words, this is the opposite. It's the very opposite, very adverse of all other religions. And it's high time a religion was born that recognized the fleshly existence. We perform human sacrifices by proxy, you might say, the destruction of human beings who would, let's say, create an antagonistic situation towards us in the form of curses and hexes. Not in actual blood rituals, because certainly the destruction of a human being physically is illegal. But we feel that the sacrifice should be a deserving one. We don't chop up babies or cut the heads off of cats or chickens or goats. We feel that this is another example of the sanctimonious hypocrisy of those who call themselves witches, warlocks, white magicians, who have practiced these things for centuries.
Our collection of, most of them are my own, and many of them were given to me as gifts by other people who thought that they were not good enough for their own houses, or at least they'd frighten their neighbors or something. So they passed them on to me. I've got a lot of rejects, white elephants of other people, and so naturally I'm very appreciative, because most of the things other people wouldn't have in their homes are the things that I seem to wind up with in mine. Most of the objects of art and the paintings are gifts or things that have been donated along the line, but the paintings that I've done are inspired pretty much through either article stories that I've read, fascinating dreams that I've had, nightmare visions, and my own ideas for plots, for perhaps situations and events. So you might say they do have stories, they're not just purely abstract. I would say these things like the skulls, the tombstones, the coffins, any of these various objects of art are memento moris, are just symbols of death. These do not imply in any way that we're the least bit eager to die or have any sort of Freudian death wish. On the contrary, these are constant reminders that death is around the corner, and death doesn't present a better than what we have now world. Death presents a negation of many of the pleasures of the flesh, and certainly most of them. And so we feel that the more things that can remind us of this, the more inspired we are to live each day to its fullest. And as far as the torture implements go, these things, we must remember, at one time were not simply torture implements, they were evangelical persuaders. And most of these things are from the Inquisition, and this type of device was known as a holy water sprinkler at one time, and also called a morning star. And so these things represent man's inhumanity to man, but also represent something to the Satanist much more important than that, that right is based on might, and the victor, whether they're right or whether they're wrong idealistically, is always considered right. The tombstone was a gift from a mortician, a man in the mortuary profession, and it's quite old. It serves as a coffee table. The dental chair and barber chair combination was also a gift, of course used during the period when dentists and barbers were pretty much one and the same. The reproduction of the outer lid of the sarcophagus of King Tut was given to me. It was made by a member of the congregation and given to me for the purposes of enhancing rituals that would be of an Egyptian nature or origin. The stone, or the mantle which holds the altar, was made from cobblestones from the San Francisco streets that were broken up in the 1906 earthquake. Little did it, I'm sure, become aware to the stonemason that it would be used for the purposes that it is today. Well, I had a man come to me the other day, and he said that it was just terrible. When he joined the Satanic Church, he was masturbating just about every day. And now he's masturbating 2 and sometimes 3 times a day. And he's very happy, much happier than he's ever been before.
Last week, too, on top of that. Well, he was really talking about me.
I I think masturbation has been already a tabooed subject of all time, and I think we should mention it. You know, the magical rituals that are performed by so-called white magicians, and have been performed for centuries, the magical circles where they chop the heads off chickens or sacrifice goats and all this sort of thing. This is considered the most secret of secret sacrifices, the most violent of all sacrifices, that of the blood sacrifice. The blood sacrifice is really just a lesser version of a much eviler sacrifice, which in some of the old grimoires on witchcraft and ceremonial magic are hinted at, only enough so that you know, reading very thoroughly, that the greatest of all secret sacrifices during a ceremonial ritual is, of course, the spilling of the seed on the ground. And so, rather than just masturbate in the eyes of their Jehovah, these so-called magicians would kill an innocent animal just for its blood-throw agony to be put out into the atmosphere, which to me is one of the true blasphemies, which, of course, is white magic.
I'm in league with the devil as much as any mortal can possibly be. He's never really been down there anyway, because according to all religionists, he walks the earth as a man, and he's supposed to take charge of carnal or mundane pursuits. One of the most objectionable things to me is when a person asks, well, what do you have to collect money for? What do you have to charge for this religion for? Why don't you just have a free will thing where it doesn't cost to belong to this religion? And they accuse me of just being a money-making racketeer, a con man of some sort. When every other religion on the face of the earth hasn't seemed to object to taking money from their parishioners. They've built large cathedrals in the midst of people living in squalor. They've constantly garnished people's wages, in a sense, by having so much percentage subscribed to churches, and yet no one has ever criticized this that is in the position usually to criticize me for conducting a continence game of any kind. I feel the money spent to be poured into the Satanic Church, and I say poured into it, if possible, should be used for, and would be used for, much more worthwhile purposes than the building of edifices and cathedrals where the people who live in squalor, in many cases around them, can simply go into the church, beat their chests, and say, I am not worthy. At least when you give the devil his due, he smiles upon you, or at least expecting a little payment in return.
It seems that most religions now are buying oats for a dead horse. We feel that all religions are coming around to Satanism. We're in the very throes of a new satanic age. The evidence is all around us. All we have to do is look at it. There's a new title for Christians called Christian atheists, and of course many movements such as the Unitarian Church have existed for a while in what would amount to a form of atheism in evening clothes. And we feel that there's no reason why these people shouldn't just flip the coin completely over and simply call themselves what religion has called them for many, many years. Call them devil worshippers, or disciples of evil, or Satanists. Of course, it's very hard for a person to hang an uncomplimentary label on themselves, and for this reason, for many years, there will be people practicing Satanism as good Christians or other religions, and they will instinctively pursue the very same things that we are, as they always have. Satan is simply a word that means the adversary, or the opposition, or the accuser. It doesn't necessarily mean evil, or brutality, or cruelty. It simply means the dissenter.
I haven't come forth in a great many years because I didn't want to be relegated to another guest on a TV talk show. But I can assure you, Satanism is here to stay. Satan can take the form of a beautiful woman. Satan can take the form of a sleek animal. An automobile can be very satanic. These things can be anthropomorphized into Satan. I love life very much. And it's been said that I can't possibly love life, that I'm a very unhappy man, or must be a very unhappy man. And I would say that I'm a very happy man, an extremely happy man, in a compulsively unhappy world.